A single mother gives her young son a doll for his birthday, not knowing it's possessed by the soul of a serial killer. Hello and welcome back to Fatal Film, a watch-along horror movie video series where every 2 weeks I give you guys a horror movie, and then we sit down and we talk about it. This week we watched the 1988 cult classic, Child's Play. This movie, of course, has a remake on the horizon, and I'm gonna be completely honest, this is my first time watching Child's Play. Even, being the big horror fan that I am, I had just never seen it. And to be honest, I had kind of written off Child's Play, kind of as like a joke, like a C-tier kind of horror movie villain. And I'm gonna be honest, I was pleasantly surprised by this movie. It's not good. It's not a good movie by any means, but I was really, I was expecting this to be like a 4 out of 10. I'll get to my rating at the end of the video, but I'm happy to say it's not a 4 out of 10. So the movie starts off with a police officer chasing down renowned serial killer Charles Lee Ray. And Charles, he ends up getting shot and he's injured, so he goes and he finds refuge in a nearby toy store. And when this movie was starting off, look, this movie was put out in 1988, but I swear, man, just a couple episodes ago, we watched A Nightmare on Elm Street, which was released 4 years earlier in 1984. And for some reason, this movie looks and just feels older than A Nightmare on Elm Street. I swear, if you were to tell me this is a movie from the 70s, I'd believe it. I don't know what it is, but this movie it feels fucking old. So the police officer follows Charles into the toy store and they kind of have a final confrontation. And he ends up shooting Charles one more time. Charles is basically dying. And in his dying breath, I'm gonna be honest, I did not see this coming. He apparently is some sort of fucking voodoo master or some shit, because he is able to transfer his soul and his consciousness into a doll. He was looking for a person and he was walking around, I need to find someone, but obviously he didn't have enough time left. He was dying. This motherfucker was shot, he was bleeding out, so he grabbed the nearest thing that he could find, which was a good guy doll. This creepy ass looking red-headed doll that's really huge. It's the size of a child. And this doll on its own is creepy, let alone being possessed by Charles Lee Ray. So Charles, he is able to transfer his consciousness to this doll in super dramatic effect, clouds form in the sky, lightning strikes, and I swear to God, the store fucking blows up. It's kind of crazy. And that was how Chucky was born. And that's when we get introduced to our two protagonists, the young child, Andy. And when we first get introduced to Andy, it's his birthday and he's making his mom breakfast. But goddamn, this kid is making a mess. The OCD in me watching this scene, I was completely stressing out. He's pouring all this cereal, it's getting everywhere, this milk, and he burns the toast, and I swear it was stressing me out. Then he goes and he brings his mom the breakfast in bed. And if I were to do this when I was a kid, I would have met the other end of a belt. Because he's dripping and spilling all over the hallway, and the mom just is oh, thank you, I'll eat this later. I'm just what? So it's Andy's birthday and he unwraps his gifts, but he's very disappointed that he didn't get the one thing that he really wanted, which was, of course, that creepy-ass, red-headed good guy doll. And apparently this toy is all the rage because Andy's mom, Karen, she tried to find them, but they're sold out everywhere. So she ends up buying one from this peddler in the back alley. I would never buy my child something from this guy. He is so fucking grimy, so sketchy looking, and of course, this is the doll possessed by Charles Lee Ray. So Karen gives Andy the doll. Andy is of course ecstatic, but that evening Karen gets called into work, and so Karen's friend Maggie is watching Andy while she is away. And this was the first night that Andy has Chucky while Maggie is watching him, and there were some kind of creepy scenes here. There's a lot of scenes where you'll just see Chucky in the background, and you're not even paying attention to what's happening in the foreground. You're just so focused on Chucky and looking is he moving? Is he up to something? What the hell's going on? And these moments were actually kind of cool. And then of course, Chucky strikes for the very first time, and he ends up hitting Maggie in the face with a hammer. It was actually kind of brutal. And she just lunges backwards and throws herself. Let's be honest, she basically throws herself out of the fucking window. And she falls several stories and dies. So Karen, when she gets back to her house, of course, she's just in a mad panic. She's thinking the worst because the police have taped off her apartment and such. To her relief, Andy is okay, but of course, Maggie died. And the worst part is the police kind of suspect Andy because Andy He's like wearing the exact same thing that Chucky's wearing. It's kind of weird, even down to like the shoes. He's wearing like the good guy branded shoes. God damn. And the cops, they find like footprints on the counter that kind of lead them to suspect Andy. And of course, they don't know that they're Chucky's footprints. So the next day, Karen drops Andy off at school. First of all, after experiencing something so traumatic, I was very surprised to see that, she was even taking Andy to school at all. And Andy brings Chucky to school with him, and of course, Chucky convinces Andy to cut class, and they go like all the way across town to like the slums in this sketchy ass neighborhood. This like 5-year-old kid on his own. Where he got money for the subway, who the hell knows? Why no one is questioning this like 5-year-old kid wandering around like the worst part of town by himself? You just gotta suspend a little bit of disbelief. And Chucky takes him across town to track down his old partner, to take his revenge for basically leaving him to die. His partner's living in this dank-ass, run-down building. There's rats everywhere. Super disgusting. And then he blows the place up. He just fucking blows the place up. So the cops arrive, and of course, they take custody of Andy. And so now the cops are suspecting Andy, this 5-year-old kid. They're suspecting Andy of blowing up this building and killing the guy inside, and they're suspecting him of killing Maggie. He's like a 5-year-old kid, and Andy's excuse this whole time, of course, is, it's Chucky. Chucky's the one doing it. He's talking to me. I didn't do any of this. And the cops don't believe Andy, of course, and even like his mom, Karen, doesn't believe him either. So the cops, they end up like admitting him, just for a few days, they end up admitting Andy to like this psychiatric hospital. They're keeping like this 5-year-old kid in a cell. I don't know what the hell is going on in this hospital, because there's like shock therapy and all kinds of crazy shit happening. I'm just like, this is 1988. Would this shit fly in 1988? And why? Because the kid says that his doll's talking to him. Kids talk to their dolls all the time. I'm just like, this is crazy. So Karen, obviously she's super distressed. Her son is in a fucking mental hospital. Her best friend just died. And so now she's got the Chucky doll. She's got the Chucky doll. She's at home alone. And she's looking at it. She's looking at the box. And the batteries fall out. They were never in the Chucky doll the whole time. So how is he talking? How is he doing all this shit?
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
And so she's like confronting him, and she's about to throw him into the fireplace. And that's when Chucky reveals himself.
I said talk to me, damn it, or else I'm gonna throw you in the fire!
You stupid bitch, you filthy slut! Did you fuck with me?
Watch your profanity.
And I'm just like, oh shit. He like goes off, and I'm not gonna lie, once Chucky starts talking and he goes like, once he goes full Chucky, he's actually super entertaining. He's not even scary in my opinion. He's just like amusing. Watching him move around with his like tiny little legs, his little like shuffle, he honestly reminded me of like Stewie Griffin or something like that. This tiny little thing just shouting all of this terrible profanity. So Karen survives like her first encounter with Chucky, and she goes and she seeks the help of the police officer who's in charge of the investigation against Andy, and it turns out he's the same cop that happened to kill Charles Lee Ray. So the cop, his name is Mike, he basically reluctantly agrees to help Karen out because he's, he kind of feels bad for what's happening to her and what's happening to Andy, even though he kind of thinks that Karen is crazy and he doesn't believe that the dolls come to life until he has an encounter with Chucky himself. And this scene is so ridiculous because like Chucky and Mike, they're like in the car together. Chucky's trying to stab Mike like through the car like seat cushions. I'm just like, Mike, just hit the fucking brakes, dude. This scene went on for so long. They're just driving through the city trying not to crash. So after this, Mike discovers a couple of things. One, that Chucky is actually alive and that Andy's actually telling the truth. And then second of all, that the person, the soul that is possessing Chucky is the serial killer that he killed, Charles Lee Ray. So now Mike has a personal stake in this as well. And it also gives him and Karen kind of a lead and kind of like a direction on where to go, because he was kind of investigating Charles Lee Ray, so he knows who he was affiliated with, he knows where he would go, and so he tracks down his old his old voodoo master, I guess. But Chucky beats him there, and he kind of confronts his old voodoo master. He kind of blames him in a way because he's like, you did this, you turned me into this. And here we also get a little bit of exposition and kind of we learn what is happening to Chucky. Basically, the longer he stays in this doll body, the more kind of human he becomes. He's starting to realize that he can feel pain. We also learn Chucky's weakness. Even though he's inside of like this plastic, doll, he does have a actual human heart beating inside of him. He also kind of gives Chucky his motivation as well, because in order to return to like a physical, like human body instead of being stuck in like a doll body for the rest of his life, is to basically exchange his soul with the person who he first confided with in his actual identity, which is Andy. So Andy is now his first priority, it's his first target. So Chucky, being the asshole that he is, he goes ahead, he kills his old master. Fuck it. Some of the shit that comes out of Chucky's mouth.
But I gotta go. I have a date with a 6-year-old boy.
It's like, wait, what? Wait, what did he say? So Karen and Mike, they arrive too late. You know, Chucky's old voodoo mentor in his last dying breath basically tells them the same thing, that they need to go after Andy. So Chucky makes his way to the mental hospital. We don't know how he's getting around. Who the hell knows how he's getting from place to place as a doll? Whatever. So he arrives at the mental institution to go after Andy. That's where he's being held captive. And that's, again, this is where we see like the conditions that Andy is being kept in. Like, why is he being locked up? He's a child. Andy manages to get away. He manages to escape. And in the process, like, Chucky kills the doctor by hooking him up to like this shock therapy device. And he just fries this dude. It's like, damn, how powerful was this electric therapy, this shock therapy? So Karen and Mike, they arrive at the hospital, but of course they're always just like 2 steps behind. Chucky's already gone, Andy's already gone, the doctor's now dead, which is another death, another death that they're pinning on Andy. This kid can't catch a break. And the only place that they think that Andy could have gone is back home. So they all rush back to the apartment for like the final showdown. There's this hilarious scene in the elevator.
Ugly doll. Fuck you. So
Karen and Mike, they arrive at the apartment just in time to stop Chucky from basically, you know, transferring his soul into Andy's body and possessing him. They get into this final fight scene, and Chucky is just like so insanely hard to kill. They're shooting him, they're fucking blowing off limbs. They eventually light him on fire. And you know, I did say that this movie looks really old. It looks like it could possibly pass for like a movie from the 70s. But when they start to play with some of these effects with Chucky and lighting him on fire and really like animating his face, it really looks not bad. It's all practical. There's some masterful puppetry going on. And Chucky like survives being lit on fire, and he's all charred and he's burnt. And here he starts to look kind of scary. They finally end up defeating Chucky, of course, shooting him through the heart. I was half suspecting the movie to do kind of a bait and switch, and it turns out that, you know, he was actually able to complete the soul transfer in time. And now Chucky, Charles Lee Ray, is actually possessing Andy. But it would have been like a crazy, kind of super depressing ending. That's pretty much it for the plot of the film. You know, you're not gonna go and see a movie about a fucking reanimated puppet for like the intricate plot. The movie's all about Chucky. You know, he's a possessed doll. And the movie, I think, it's pretty self-aware. You know, when you think of possessed doll, how could that be scary? The movie knows. The movie is actually quite tongue-in-cheek, it's very self-aware, and that's why it doesn't really take itself seriously. It's really presented as just as much of a dark comedy as it is a horror movie. So if you can get on board with that and the ridiculous shit that this movie is throwing at you, I think there's a lot of entertainment to be had. And I gotta say, Brad Dourif as Chucky, as Charles Lee Ray, first of all, in the opening scenes of the movie, I swear this dude's looking like Tommy Wiseau. Some scenes he even sounds like Tommy Wiseau. I did not stab her, I did not. But for real, Brad Dourif is really good in this. Just like his voice and his charisma really lend himself to Chucky. It's super iconic. Like Brad Dourif, he's an Oscar-nominated actor. You know, he's got some prestige. But it's funny that his biggest legacy is from fucking Child's Play, playing Chucky. And he's been playing him for like 30 years. As much as I like Mark Hamill, and I'm sure he's going to do a great job in the reboot, it's kind of sad to see that Brad Dourif won't be playing the character any longer. All in all, you know what? This movie was better than I expected. Tis no masterpiece. We're going to go ahead, we're going to give this movie a 6.5 out of 10. If you guys haven't seen it before, I think it's worth checking out. For next episode of Fatal Film, I don't think we've been giving the 90s enough love. You know, the 90s was kind of a dry period for horror movies because it was kind of run into the ground after the 80s. But there are still some really good 90s horror movies. We're going to check out the 1992 classic Candyman, which ironically is also being rebooted. I think that's due out like next year. Anyways, we'll watch Candyman in 2 weeks' time. Thank you guys so much for watching. Peace out.